Chicago is considered one of the architecture capitals of the world. The first skyscraper was actually built here in Chicago. It's called the Home Insurance Building. It was built in the 1880s. And it was only about 10 stories tall, about 180 feet. Now, Chicago, you may notice, is set up in a very specific way. And that is because technically, this is not, okay, it looks like we're going to the lake first. Technically, this is not the first city to stand here. Back in 1871, over half the city burnt down and we had to rebuild. So, once we rebuilt, we started calling it the second city. And that is where we get our name of the second city. Not because we are second to New York. Nobody's saying that. Nuh-uh. Technically, by a population, we are third. I'll be honest, I'll have some humility. We're about to be fourth, though. Houston may overtake us. Now, also, we are passing underneath the New Sable Bridge. Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable was our first non-native settler. He was a Haitian fur trader. And I'm going to talk about him a little bit longer later on in the tour, whenever I'm talking about more of our history. But he set up his settlement right there in 1779. Now, I'm pointing over there, but I also want to draw your attention to that beautiful building, the first building I'm talking about. That is Tribune Tower, a result of a 1922 contest for the Chicago Tribune to design the most beautiful office building. Do you think they succeeded? I definitely think they did. That is neo-Gothic architecture. You see the flying buttresses. It kind of looks like the Cathedral of Notre Dame. Owls and Hood are your architects on that building. Now, if you look to the right, a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be pointing to is going to be on our right today, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to see that very tall white building with the black vertical lines going down it. That is called the Aon Center, also known as the Standard Oil Building, also known as Big Stan. And there's a fourth nickname it has, the $80 million mistake. I don't think that's fair. It's factual, but it's not fair. Edward Durrell Stone, the original architect for that building, he clad it in white Italian Carrara marble, a very fine marble, used to sculpt the statue of David. He ordered these tiles. They were about this thick. And has anybody here been to Chicago in the winter? Well, if you want to know, you'll know it. Run. 2 years ago, we were colder than the surface of Mars. That is not a joke. Well, that tile could not take our harsh weather. It could begin to crack and fall, and you don't want that with a skyscraper. So they had to reclad it in North Carolina granite. It cost over $80 million to redo, half as much as it cost to completely build the building in the first place. Now on the right-hand side, I'm sure you've already noticed this building before we went under the bridge. It's there with the white undulating balconies. That is called Aqua, and it was designed by Jeannie Gang in 2009. Whenever it was first designed, it was voted the most beautiful residential building in the world. It's this blue building with the white undulating balconies. Kind of looks like somebody threw a pebble into a stream. Jeannie Gang designed that, and once it was designed, it was the tallest building in the world designed by a lead female architect. Isn't that awesome? Now, unfortunately, it is no longer the tallest building in the world designed by a lead female architect. I know that's a bummer. No, it's not, because last year, Jeannie Gang went wild and decided to design that building. That is the St. Regis. Just about finished. This is 1,138 feet. Sorry, 1,189 feet. It is the third tallest building in Chicago. It is a luxury, it is going to be a luxury hotel and apartment buildings. Now, when I mean luxury, I mean luxury. The very top penthouse, I have heard, is going for, it's still available, ladies and gentlemen. It is going for $24 million for raw space. You know what that means? Concrete walls, floors, nothing else. So you're going to have to spend another $10 to $20 million just decorating the thing. And if you draw your eye really high up the main tower, you're going to see it kind of looks like 2 floors have been taken out of it. That's something called a blow-through. In a lot of super tall buildings, the big thing that you got to focus on when you're designing one is one, weight, and the other thing is wind. That helps with the wind. Now, some buildings, they have something called a mass damper system that I'll explain later on. Some buildings just built a solider base to stand up against wind, but this one built a blow-through. So that means 2 floors are not inside of that building. It's literally just the elevator floor. So at the very top, wind can just blow through that tall tower, dumping into the river, and people started to get sick. Cholera, a lot of other waterborne illnesses, which are very serious in a city. So the people got together, the leaders of Chicago got together and formed the Water Reclamation District. And I'm sure in the meeting, somebody piped up and said, maybe we should just stop throwing trash in the river. And somebody louder piped up and said, be quiet, we're reversing it instead. We're gonna make it somebody else's problem. So that's what they did. They dug a canal to the Des Plaines River, which connects to the Illinois River, which then connects to the Mississippi, which then goes out to the Gulf, which is 5 feet lower than Lake Michigan. I recommend I'll let you know whenever those gates start opening, because that's very interesting. Whenever those gates open, 800,000 gallons of lake water spills into once those gates close, it'll be basically like a giant tub. And our boat is going to raise 5 feet. Now, just as a fun thing, keep your eyes peeled. You may notice like this kind of grassy area by the water, there's no seabirds, there's no seagulls, which is kind of odd. There's a reason behind that. We have a very special employee. There is a sheepdog that works at the lock, and she walks around scaring the birds away. Cool. Big hit. If she shows up while I'm talking, I might as well just not talk. Many years go by. It's unsettled or not developed very much. And then, 1779, a man by the name of John Baptiste Pointe de Sable, I already mentioned him. He was a Haitian fur trader. He made beaver fur pelt hats. They were very, very popular. He became extremely wealthy, married a Potawatomi woman named Catherine, and the American government bought his land in 1808 because people started to trade around him, and a sort of a town started to get built around. So they wanted to protect the traders there, so they built Fort Dearborn in 1808. Now, population was steadily growing, and then the Erie Canal was put in, and just a boom of trade was happening in the Great Lakes system. And we basically skyrocketed with population. By 1839, we had 4,000 people, and we were officially dubbed a city of Chicago. And by 1871, we had 300,000 citizens. Now, fun thing about Chicago, the city of Chicago, I mentioned here, Marquette and Joliet were helped by Potawatomi people. And the Potawatomi people were referring to the area as Chicagoa. And they just figured, oh, that is what the area is called. But the Potawatomi were actually referring to what grew there. Like I said, it was a very marshy, kind of swampy area, so naturally, leeks, garlic, and onions would naturally grow there, and it would become very fragrant in the summer. So Chicagoa roughly translates to smelly onion. So take that, Big Apple. We got the smelly onion. So 1871, something real bad happened. October 8, 1871, the Chicago fire took place. Now, how did the Chicago fire start? Feel free to shout it out. Cow. Yeah, there's one word that always gets shouted. Cow, cow. If you remember one thing from this tour, it's that Daisy the cow is innocent. Yes. I know, isn't that a shocker? Well, the story is that a woman named Catherine O'Leary went down to her barn to milk her cow Daisy. Daisy kicked over a lantern. That lantern set alight her barn. Not the case. That is a story that was made up by a reporter the day after the fire. He actually admitted that on his deathbed that he made it up. The O'Learys were exonerated in the 1990s. They were long dead. And Daisy the cow was as well. The weird thing about it is the Chicago fire started, really, in all reality, we don't know how. But the truth, the potential truth, is actually stranger than that fictional story. And here are a few of my favorite theories. The first theory, mafia. The mafia burned down the barn to settle any kind of gambling debt that one of the O'Learys had. Sounds like an HBO drama. I'm here for it. Second theory, space rocks. Right? Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Meteor showers did burn down 2 close towns in the surrounding states around us. Peshtigo, Wisconsin, I know, was one of them, and they proved that those were started by meteor showers. And then my favorite one, a neighbor of the O'Learys by the name, I'm not making this up, his name was Pegleg O'Sullivan, emptied his pipe onto their yard, and that is what caused the fire. Now, we don't really know, but that fire was very damaging. It cost 250 people their lives, 17,000 people, or 17,000 buildings burnt down, over 100,000 people were left homeless. And at the time, the buildings were basically just made of wood, cast iron, and tar paper. So the buildings just went up like a light, unfortunately. Now I'm going to get back to a little bit of Chicago history, but I'm sure you guys have been noticing this is Navy Pier. It is the second most popular tourist attraction in Illinois. It was built in 1917 as Municipal Pier 2. Municipal Pier 1 did not get built. It was supposed to be built down there. But this was originally built as Municipal Pier 2. Then in 1929, it was renamed to Navy Pier to honor the Navy aviators from World War I. And then it was used in World War II as a naval aviation training center. At the time, to graduate from this training center, you had to land on the aircraft carrier 8 times successfully. Now I believe the limit is 36, and the youngest graduate of Navy Pier was George H.W. Bush, 19 years old. Now Navy Pier sat empty after World War II for a very long time, and then in the 1990s, a huge revitalization project basically took over Navy Pier and became the tourist attraction we know today. This bridge has some very interesting historical significance. It was it's called the Roosevelt Bridge. The first wheels to go across this bridge were not of an automobile, but the wheelchair wheels for Franklin Delano Roosevelt's wheelchair. Those are the first wheels on that bridge. Now, if you look to the right, you will see nothing. On the right, we have Riverview 1 and Riverview 2, designed by James DiStefano in 2001 and 2004. These are luxury townhomes and apartments. And on the bottom part right here, these are the townhomes. And their prices range from $8 and $2 million. Notice I did not say 8 to 2 or 2 to 8 million, because there are only 2 prices for these townhomes. This side of the river, you have the townhomes that are 8 million, and then on the other side of the building, same exact townhomes, $2 million. It's all about that view. Now at the very top of this building, you'll see those 4 windows. That is the penthouse. The penthouse, I have heard, ranged from $7.7 to $14 million, but you're getting a lot for your money. You're getting a whole basketball court indoor, a racquetball court, 17-person sauna, 17-person jacuzzi, 4 giant aquariums. Now, in front of us, we're going to see this hotel. It was called the Sheraton Grand Hotel on the right-hand side. Now, the Sheraton Grand Hotel is the 3rd largest hotel in Chicago, and it boasts a very impressive ballroom. So if you're thinking about hosting a party with 5,000 of your closest friends, Sheraton Grand Hotel and Ballroom is for you. What I really want to draw your attention to on this building is not the building itself, but the glass in the windows. Actually, if you look around, most of the buildings have a similarly tinted glass. Greenish blue hue to it, and there is a reason. That is the water that we are on right now. The river water has this naturally green color, so they wanted to complement it with the buildings. So that is contextualism, complementing the natural surroundings of the building with your architecture. And that is why they're mimicking the color of the water. Now, the water isn't always this color. One day a year it does change to a bright Kelly green. The Plumbers Union of Chicago created an orange vegetable dye used the river. This is a proprietary blend. They have not shared it with any other city. It is orange, it is vegetable, and it does dissolve in the water within 3 days, and it's safe for the fish. And they do that every St. Patrick's Day. Now, who here has been to New York or is from New York City? Anyone? Yeah? Does that look familiar? It should. That is supposed to look like Rockefeller Center. That is intentional because that is NBC Tower, built in the 1980s. Skidmore, Owings & Merrill is the architect, or the architectural firm. Now this is very strange because it's an Art Deco building built in the 1980s. Art Deco, sweeping vertical lines, a lot of limestone facades. Yes, that is Art Deco, and it's usually common in the 20s and 30s. Jerry Springer was actually filmed in that building. Isn't that something to be proud of? This building right here was designed by Dirk Lohan. It is the University of Chicago's Bleacher Center. This was a pretty controversial building because if you look on the side right here, there are no windows. There is a reason. And when Dirk was asked about no windows on the sides, that is because there are classrooms on those sides. And he said students at the University of Chicago should not be looking out the window onto the river. They should be paying attention in class. Seems like a fun dude. But he may be onto something. The University of Chicago has the second most Nobel Prize winners for any college, second to Harvard. There's over 90 of them, mostly for finance. Now on the right-hand side, you're going to see the Apple Store. That is inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Waters. It was designed by a British architect, Sir Norman Foster, first British architect in Chicago. And at the top part there, it is supposed to look like an iPad. Your eyes are up. Now on the right, above the Wendella Boat Dock, we have the Wrigley Building. Built in the early 1920s, it was the first skyscraper built north of Michigan Avenue. Clad in over 200,000 terracotta tiles, it is a good example of the French Beaux Arts art style, as is the London Guarantee, which I will talk about later. But French Beaux Arts, you can tell, an ornate bottom, a stack of floors, and then an ornate top. That is the French Beaux Arts art style. Graham Anderson, Prost, and White are your architects on that building. Now, right behind me to the right, this is Trump International Hotel and Tower, the second tallest building in the Chicago skyline, at 1,388 feet. This building is the heaviest concrete structure in the country. Over 20,000 dump trucks worth of concrete were poured into this building. It is a concrete structure, it's just clad in steel and glass. And your architect on this building is Adrian Smith. Now on the right, this is 333 West Wacker, one of the most beautiful buildings in Chicago, and I say that because it was voted that. It is a good example of contextualism, a building moving with the surroundings that it is around. So whenever the river bends, that building bends with it. That is also the location of Ferris Bueller's dad's work. Now, if you look at eye level on the right-hand side, you're going to see this gray box with the black projectors. That is a very cool thing. That is the world's largest projection system because it projects the world's largest art installation. At 9 o'clock every night, highly recommend, ladies and gentlemen, Art on the Mart is projected, covering the merchandise mart. Art from local Chicago artists, as well as art from the Art Institute. I believe the Obama portraits, presidential portraits, are the theme of this one, of the current one that they're running. But yeah, that is 9 to 9:30 every night at the merchandise mart. Chicago has over 30, or has the second most movable bridges of any town in the world, second only to Amsterdam. These bridges move in the spring and the fall every Wednesday and Saturday to allow the boats to go underneath them. The one that wouldn't be able to clear that otherwise. Good example of Art Deco architecture right here. You may notice this setback at 121 West Wacker. That setback is because whenever this building was first built in the 1920s, there was no air conditioning, and that utilized wind. The wind would sweep up that center tower, and it would create cross breezes, basically cooling it down. Now, under the bridges, you see these little metal structures. Those are called eyelashes, and they're to prevent people walking along the riverwalk from any kind of debris on the bridges falling on them while they're moving. Now on the right-hand side, we have 77 West Wacker, a great example of postmodernism in architecture. You see classical influences, so that's mixing the old with the new. Classical influences, like in classic Greek and Roman architecture at the bottom here, and then you draw your eye up to the glass and steel, that's the modern. And then at the very top, it kind of looks like we took the top of the Parthenon and just cut its head off and then put it on top of the building. That's a neoclassic, a great example of how beautiful a building can be in Chicago. And then we have 55 West Wacker. That is an example of brutalism.
That is a brutalist building popularized in the 60s in Russia. Russian government buildings, also US government buildings, use brutalism a lot. It's almost intended to look intimidating, authoritative, mean, almost intentionally ugly, but that is brutalism for you. This gray building here is the Leo Burnett building, and you'll see these little silver things. Those are called silver mullions, and they are used to draw in light. Now, the Leo Burnett building is home to the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency, which is famous for Tony the Tiger, the Jolly Green Giant, Ronald McDonald, the Meow Mix theme song, you know? Meow, 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 meow. You know that one? I'm not gonna sing again, I promise. Unless I get a request. Now, as we exit the bridge, I want you to look a little bit further beyond, past the Morton's Steakhouse sign. This green building with the green terracotta tile with the gold top, you can't miss it. That gold clock tower, that is the Carbide and Carbon building. It is home to a hotel. And it was designed by the Burnham brothers, sons of Daniel Burnham. And this was built in 1929, and if you know anything about American history in 1929, you know that the Prohibition was going on. And that building was designed with the intention of protesting Prohibition. It intentionally was designed to look like a champagne bottle.